everything you have, you need to utilize it. If you utilize the things you are having, is much more than every VC is having. VCs cannot do this. They need to ask other companies to have reference calls, to evaluate, give me the results of the POC, do this, and this. Also for M&A. If you want to sell your startup, we have an M&A team. It's fantastic at Henkel. So you can even utilize our network to sell it to other companies. Yeah, I understand. Startups don't want to have crappy CVCs on their cap table. Yeah, I agree. So work with the good ones. And there are some of them. Looking into the top 25 quartiles of the financial performance. And if you see this, European, US, by Carter, and so on, the TVPIs, the net TVPIs coming in. I can directly name you 4, 5, 6 CVCs who are much better than most of the VCs, which are making a lot of marketing outside. So the consolidation, maybe it's too many VCs in the world. I would make the bet, if you do your things right, if you have a professional team, you know what you want, you know what you don't want, and you know what you do if you find it, why should you be worse in the performance like a VC? I don't find any excuses. For me, it is super relevant that we stay focused to what we understand and what we know and not go broad in every opportunity, because then you get lost, and it's the biggest threat for your financial discipline at the end as well. So stick to what you really understand, and the role needs to be to fulfill the gaps of the company.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Most VCs think CVCs are slower, more conflicted, and structurally inferior to financial VCs. Today's guest runs a CVC that just delivered a net TVPI in the top quartile of European venture and argues that professionally managed CVCs will outperform most VCs. They will not just match, they will outperform. Marc Thom heads Henkel Ventures right off of the EUVC Summit and Awards, where he won the CVC of the Year award. So what a guy. Joining me to pressure test that claim is, of course, Jeppe Høier, who runs our EU CVC corporate joint venture and has spent more time inside corporate venture programs than anyone I know.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Welcome both.
What a great start. What a great start. I never started like this. Amazing. Yeah.
Give everyone a bit of context to Henkel and yourself and your journey into this wonderful world of venture.
Thanks a lot. And my name is Marc. I'm half Dutch, half German, working since 2022 for Henkel, heading up the venture capital arm here, the corporate venture capital arm, which is a wonderful, beautiful name of Henkel Ventures. And we have 300 million assets under management in 2 funds. And the activities at Henkel in corporate venture capital started in 2017. And after the first fund ended in 2021 at the end, the board decided to have a second, corporate venture capital period. And this is currently the fund number 2, which I'm leading, and I came on board for the fund number 2. And we are investing globally in startups. We are investing as well into venture capital funds. We are investing between $500,000 up to 5 million, but we are concentrating on the Northern Hemisphere, US, Europe, India, China, Japan, and so on, but not so much right now in the Southern Hemisphere. We're investing into 18 search fields, which is very broad, but you can bring them down into digitalization and sustainability. But if you go deeper and you look deeper into this, it is about sustainable packaging, it is about new materials, it's about humanoid robotics, AI, and so on. So it's a lot what is core to our business. We are investing into things which are important for our company today, the next 3 to 5 years or 10 years down the road. And we're doing this since I think we have around more than 80 investments, but also have set up more than 100 partnerships, which is the much better way, because sometimes, and in many times, it's better to make a collaboration between a startup and a corporate. It's also tricky to do it and to set it up, but it's very, very good and can also play out in a good way. And we invested already very actively, and that's in a nutshell what we're doing.
I'm super curious to understand how you came to this structure, because as you just described, you have, well, I know this, you have more than 90 use cases across the company. Then you have the 18 verticals that you just kind of described. And then you, of course, also talk about 3 pillars that separates each of your arms, so to say, product innovation, process, and then business model in your framework. How do you do this? How have you come to this setup? And maybe you can expand on it even further.
Okay, so that's a very relevant question, because of course we could theoretically invest everywhere, where the opportunities are, but we are very data driven. So what we have started with is to understand what's the different goals and the different ambitions of the business units, where they want to go to, and what is it on this journey, what they can do by themselves, what existing partners and suppliers can deliver, and where are the gaps which we should and could fill with external innovation by the startups. We have millions of startups out there. Not all of them are relevant for us, but some of them are, and some of them are very relevant. So what are we doing? So we are building the outside-in view, what we can see from outside, our business is building the inside out view. So, and of course, if you're matching this into certain search fields, you will get a pretty good 360-degree perspective on everything that you can say, okay, this is what we see outside, this is what we see inside, and maybe these are the things we should focus on. Then we are mapping all of this and looking into where are we going to partner, we are going to invest in. So you need to define a clear investment hypothesis and a clear partnership hypothesis. And on the fields we are aligned and collaborating with the business units and the functions on, we know exactly what we are looking for and why. Because in the best case, as you pointed out, there are use cases and search fields. Every search field has plenty of use cases, and a use case might be, plastic avoidance, or could be plastic, bio-based plastic or something like this. Of course, this is important. Then from the business units, it needs to be quality, it needs to be quantity, it needs to be availability and so on. And this is what we need it for. And then, of course, you can target and look into the companies outside who can provide this, because maybe the existing suppliers are not ready by regulation or whatever, taking some more time, but you would like to make this impact. And then you can, of course, find a lot of sources. And then it's clear you want to partner, you have a transactional relationship, or there's anything where you would like to or need to invest in, because a few years down the road, this is becoming very relevant, but you don't have a project team right now, and you need to bridge the time until then. So, and then, of course, to make the company survive and grow where you want the company to grow to.
Yeah, but I'd love to ask you, just to clarify a bit to the audience, how do you see VCs and CVCs rather think about one to do corporate venturing and one to do corporate clienting and one to do investing?
What I preach a lot, and also from the readings that I've done, right, is that it's a lot about corporate culture. It might seem a little bit of a weak answer, but when you look at different corporates, they have a different behavior and where you can find the success. I think, Alex Manson from Standard Chartered Ventures writes a lot about this. There are the 3 pillars of corporate venturing: build, partner, and invest. You never know where you're going to be successful. What is also really nice today is that Marc, he knows everything about partnering and investing. So here we go, right? And then I think, to be very concrete, it's also a lot about, what liquidity is available. Can you actually participate in a Series B round where there's something really to partner with in a startup, right? Or do you need to go earlier stage and then wait for a period of time before the startup is ready to partner with, right? So there are different tracks depending on where you want to go, right? But there's no doubt that the holy grail for startups and corporates are the partnerships, right? So if you get that right, you get very, very far.
So the first, so as it took over, the first 9 months we just spent by building very boring documents. It's not really boring, but it seems to be. It's huge Word documents where you go in and you're defining an investment proposal statement. Okay, how are we investing? Where are we investing in? Why are we investing? What is the definition of success? How much money, where, and so on. We built a second document called the Investment Committee Charter, where you are, describing in 20 pages or even more how you make decisions, who is going to make a decision, and how can I get the buy-in for a strategic investment and so on, that you can really go through what the investment committee gets to see, what are the decision criteria, how do we build the quorum. And there's a third document, which is usually the biggest one, what Jeppe pointed out, is the partnership proposal statement. It's a huge one, because who is doing the partnership? What's the ambition? What's the target? What are the expectations? Who's handling this? Is it the business unit? Is it the corporate venture capital team? Whoever is doing this. So basically, you're looking into all the different perspectives, and there's one thing clear: this is also humans who are doing all of this, and you have always great people in some areas, and you have people who are new to this, how to partner and make a project management with a startup in other departments. Henkel is 150 years old, and thanks God we have a lot of fantastic colleagues who know how to work also with smaller colleagues or startups, not smaller colleagues, smaller startups. And there are, of course, people who are not so used to do it, but over the time, it's super relevant. So getting external innovation in-house is super relevant. And Jeppe pointed out something very relevant. There are companies which are pretty quick profitable, and they don't need so many rounds until they go, big. And there are companies like in the deep tech space which need 10 to 15 years. So what they need in every round and every cycle is different. So corporate can help building up, supply chains, can help building a facility can help with regulations, can help with everything, things which we usually forget about what a company and a corporate can really deliver as a value. You can call everyone or the people here, and there are experts in the different fields. So also for marketing, sales, get an idea about the correct pricing and so on. So corporates can do a lot of things, and at the end, it's a cultural thing, like you said, Jeppe, and this will never change. And if the culture is great and people are open, and Henkel is a pretty open environment for external innovation, then things can go and pretty good. Yeah.
And then I think for people listening in here, right, what is really important about what Marc is saying, right, is that planning of how to do partnerships is really important. And when you hear Marc talking elsewhere also about these documents he has built, right, we had the great pleasure of entertaining some global corporates last week in London, right? And you can see it on corporates' faces when Marc talks about this, the holy Bible of partnerships, right? They really listen in. This is important. And I think if you should take anything away from this right now, it is, do the groundwork first before you get started, and spend some quality time on that with your corporate colleagues.
Maybe a great place to go now is make it super crystal clear. What is the use case briefing that we spoke about before? You've called it this front door, and it is what's required to be done before any startup sourcing is started. The business unit has to answer 6 questions. Those are problem descriptions, or the pain point. You have to be super clear about why it hasn't been solved yet. Then you got to be clear about what's the desired solution you want. And then the business impact as the third one, must have features as the fourth. And then as the fifth, known solutions and why they're insufficient. And then the 6th, success measurements and KPIs. Described in more detail the use case briefing. Now I just shared high level the 6 steps to it, or the 6 questions that need to be answered by the business units.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing, without going too much into the details, is that you understand why are we looking into this, and what happens with the startup if we find it, and what are the criteria we are looking for. So if you are sure that behind every use case there is a human being at Henkel who said, this is what I need, is filling out, this kind of questionnaire and is saying, I need exactly this to reach this. And then, of course, you need to understand, is this really the right perspective your colleague is bringing on, or is it, you need later stage, you need maybe earlier stage and so on. It's all about expectation management as well, to discuss with these companies and to be clear where this goes to. But of course, the problem needs to be big. We should not do the single small things which helps one individual person. We also need to make sure that the things they're looking for are aligned with their highest committees. So it needs to be a top management buy-in. So, and of course, they see everything what's coming in. And of course, also when it comes to partnerships, which might turn someday into an investment or so, it's also relevant because we're reporting on this and looking onto this. Because there's also one thing which is pretty much dangerous is if you're starting 20 collaborations and 19 of them ending in a chaos, it really not is helping you for building this muscle. So we need to accompany a few of them until to a certain point. But we also need to make sure that what we are doing and that what we are enabling, is really something which is tangible. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And this is from corporate to corporate different. So sometimes it's organic growth. Sometimes it's utilizing digital solutions to start somewhere, to have new clients and customers. I give you a very simple example. We have partnered with a startup called Anami, which builds virtual humans. And virtual humans looks like us. Maybe it's, you usually look younger and better, but not maybe like you, Andreas, but for sure like me. Yeah. But at the end, this virtual human starts then to train our hairdressers on products from us. On the other side, we can all imagine that virtual humans, the more real they are becoming, there will be the point where they can also upsell. So you need to start somewhere, and startups build this ground. And then, of course, if you understand what are the use cases, you can then help them to expand it, what we can also see outside.
Marc, how does a use case go from being a use case and a partnership to an actual investment hypothesis and an investment being done?
That's something which I'm very happy about, that Henkel has this DNA. We are working with a lot of startups, also in purchasing and sourcing, solutions which are there. Many of these solutions which we are using here are startups, because famous investors have invested in. So we are testing some of them and working with them, because we also can bring startups into the selection process. It doesn't need to be always SAP or something else, but in many cases, SAP is a great source. But it can also be that they don't have these features what you really need. So you bring the startups in and they survive, the selection rounds. They also are applicable for the use cases, and the company starts working with them. And after some time, we identify why they are so much better than the rest. And then some of these companies are pretty strong understanding our, industry, chemistry, and whatever we, in our business can make. But then maybe they want to develop into something else, and then they need some kind of, funding. And then the strategic investments which are coming into might play a big role, because the understanding what they learned from us to bring it to the next level could be another CVC as well. So we see this. On the other side, we partly using the proof of concepts then to make a further technical due diligence, because we all know most of the solutions are theoretically. Then solutions go into the market. Is there a perfect market fit or not? And I think we can evaluate it by ourselves by using it. And if it's, convincing, and it can start and work in an environment like a 50,000 people company in more than 100 offices, then it might be that it also can survive somewhere else. So, and can make there some impact.
Marc, you shared with us in confidence your investment memo. I'm not going to share everything here, but you have a section in there that financial VCs don't have, which I was super curious to understand better. And you have a section that's called Role of Henkel. I'd love to ask you about what are you putting in there? What does it contain? Commitments, optionality? Is it just a narrative? How do you use that section?
Well, that's important. So, if you get the potential chance to get on a cap table of a promising company, there is something they are expecting from us. And they are expecting something from us in a seed round, maybe expecting something from us in Series A, Series B, Series C. For me, it's super important that we can fulfill the expectations and that we are clear that our role the startup has towards us is exactly something we can fulfill. On the other side, what's the role of us? Is it, if we are too dominant in, I think we all know that if a strategic investor goes in too early and is dominant on the cap table with rougher rights and so things can go really wrong. The role of Henkel needs to be to help the company don't make mistakes, to, get the insights we know. We help the company to grow. And of course, we are wearing the head of the company, and that's our role. The role of Henkel is, as for us, a very important thing, because if you don't have a role in investing in a company, you might not really should invest in, and we are having a financial discipline, and we also have a strategic discipline. And for me, it is super relevant that we stay focused to what we understand and what we know, and not go broad in every opportunity, because then you get lost, and that's the biggest threat for your financial discipline at the end as well. So stick to what you really understand, and the role needs to be to fulfill the gaps of the company.
Even with the Bible in place and you have all these playbooks of how to do it right, where does a deal normally fails within internal review, and, where do you have the most challenges, even though you have prepared so much?
So the strategy of our company can also change, like every strategy from every company. So for example, one of the big learning curves we had in the past has been that one of our investment hypotheses in sustainability of synthetic materials has become true, but you need to understand what are the regulations when are they coming in and how important is it. And sometimes it's also that the customers are doing different things in the shop than they are telling you. If you would ask them before, would you pay €3 more for a sustainable product? Yes or no? They say yes. They go in and they buy, not the sustainable one, to safeguard some euros. There's also some things which we understood that, the behavior is not always, rational. But the things which is failing is usually, I could really bring it down. We have seen since 2022 more than 5,000 companies, which are relevant. So we started more than 500 times the due diligence, and we only invested at the end into something about 40. So it shows a real funnel. So why are they failing? Too high valuation. Then there is another thing, maybe not enough funding for the next round to reach the milestones. Over optimistic next round milestones. Usually startups are intending to say, okay, sales cycles are very small. We think it could be bigger, especially if you're dealing with big corporates. So if the milestones are not clear, and also, is the team the right team to make it happen right now? Do they have all the things for the next maybe 12, 24 months? What is it, what's needed in the long term? Of course, you have specialist funds where we love to invest with because they understand completely what they do. Because what you should not have is a fragmented cap table with a lot of different companies on. Everybody has an idea, but nobody is an expert in what it is. So then also there are some alarm clocks. There are many different things where we stop it, but also there is one thing when we need to stop it if we see it's not the right company. We are not the right company to invest in, because if we are not the right ones, maybe somebody else should do. Okay, that's also very relevant. So if you cannot fulfill the expectations, we should not do it, and it's sometimes hard because it's financial opportunities, but it is a lot of different things. But valuations, of course, in times of blown up valuations, plays a big role, but also exit scenarios need to be clear. Yeah, and sometimes it's not 100% clear, it's never 100%, but sometimes it's not clear. Okay, what is it where this company wants to go to? And some of them want to make a quick exit, maybe within a year or two. That's not what we want to do for, strategic collaborations. Then there are a way.
Marc, just following up here, right? What you often hear me say on stage is that we know two things in corporate life, and that is that people and strategy change. Now, you covered a little bit on the strategy side. Also from some of your previous answers, on the people side, do you have special measures for your core colleagues of how to collaborate with Henkel Ventures? What are their incentives to do this?
Yeah, good point. I just spoke this morning about this internally, because as we started 4 years before, it was a different thing. We started the first 9 months to building just the documents, but we aligned all the documents with the relevant stakeholders in the company. So everybody should be aware what we do, why we do, how we do. Everybody should be aware what we're expecting from them, what they can expect from us. We have described the roles and responsibilities, and at the end, we approved it together and said, this is what we want to do, so no surprises. But human beings might change over the time, and then if in your investment committee 2 people are changing, you start over, maybe also building trust. But trust over the time is the most important thing. If they understand that you can deliver, tangible, outcome for their own KPIs, it's also very, very good for them to have this collaboration. And at the beginning, it was that we have been a little bit seen like an alien, because always spending 10 years from now, and corporate usually concentrated on the next 12 to 36 months, could be seen as a little bit strange. But over some time, it's showing that, the guys pointed it out. We're building some research, share it. It's an upskilling and foresight things. They say, okay, this is what we see. And then it comes down to maybe the most important thing is, after 3 years, it starts that my teams has been integrated into internal strategic planning of the business units partly. So they ask, people from my team to, hey, can you give your perspective? And I think then you are deep in, and that's for me so relevant to have this trusted relationship. But it took some years, and it can take some years. Trust is not built overnight. I think that's true.
Marc, I'd love to make this super concrete by looking at one of the investment cases that you've shared with us. If we start with the search field, which is you saying, okay, we're going to look in one of these verticals because this is important to us. Let's take AI, because that one is very upfront for everyone right now, and everyone feels like they should be doing something in it. You made the investment in ResearchGate. And I think that's a bit of a non-obvious to people. Why would Henkel make this investment, and how does it map into Henkel's business units? So I'd love to take that case to try and unpack and understand, how did you go from search field to investment, and where are you today with that investment?
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's a good pick. So this has been done very early, a bit before the time of the OpenAIs, and so we could clearly see that scientific research is super relevant for R&D teams. So it was clear that if the scientific journals are uploading their papers, and there is a lot of, it's like a network for scientists, a lot of intelligence and research becoming visible. So let's assume a company like Henkel needs to get this input. So how are we doing that? Usually we have a lot of scientific people as well on our side. We have a lot of PhDs in chemistry and so on. But of course, we cannot read everything what's being published in the world. Every day, new things popping up. And our vision on this company is that if you have 300 million articles and scientific papers on it, and AI, this was clear, is coming one day and will read everything and can read everything. If then you are building something up like a tool where you can utilize this, if you have this, it was also clear that this could speed up the process of new formulations, because you could utilize the world knowledge. And this was one of the things behind ResearchGate at this point of time. understanding and thinking about when the data becomes even more relevant in consumption, for us to look into this could be a big thing. So to see how it is working today is that there are going this route at the moment to change from being the scientific network only, but also building a platform for journals where you can generate, more of scientific releases and research. This might be the starting point of something which is at the end true information from true scientists from true universities in a world of uncertain data. This seems to be a pretty solid solution for getting access to real world data, where you could then maybe one day utilize this for new formulations. This was one idea.
I'd love to ask both of you a question, which is venture capital is oftentimes defined by vertical focuses. And you mentioned this earlier as well, Marc. You love to invest with vertically focused VCs because they're super niche, super great at what they do. They know the space. Henkel, and as with any other corporate, are oftentimes defined by the fact that they are across many different spaces. Henkel, the case in point, recycling, AI materials, and consumer health. How do you navigate this, setting up the venture unit? And the broader question, of course, to you, Jeppe, is how do you see corporates navigating this when they need to set something up that's typically quite small and you have only a limited amount of shots on goal with your investment portfolio, but you have a mothership that's very wide and you got to somehow be able to straddle that you need to provide value to the entire mothership, but you also only have so many shots.
A lot of corporates, they start out with, picking the low-hanging fruits. Where can you actually get support? And you're looking for that support all the time. It's not that many that have had the chance that Marc have had to spend significant time on building this up. Right? So I think a lot of it comes from also being unprepared. There are, in my search field of corporates, mainly in the Nordics and Northern Germany, right? They have a tendency to stay here and do their searches here and not look at a startup in Brazil, for example. So they limit themselves in the solutions they can find for the challenges that are within the specific corporate. So from my view, I would definitely say, it's starting out with too few ambitions of where to take it is the main challenge.
I can make a very concrete example is that at the moment, if you're a chemistry company or a company, in this area where formulations and IPs play a big role, it's clear that AI is changing how the game is going. So it's also clear that 150 years of history is not anymore, the defense line for the next 150 years. So you need to understand the technology which is coming up and different opportunities, which are at the same time on the flipping the coin, also the biggest challenges. So looking into AI. So if you're utilizing AI into with small language models which are specialized for new materials, and you will be able to utilize this in the way to speed up your own formulations, you will come up with more product innovations, and we also are able to maybe expand the business broader into adjacencies by understanding this. By the correct utilization of technology. What is important here is that the venture capital teams usually see where the money goes, and you see there is a huge amount of concentration of money in a few companies, but as well into some companies which are niche, but which are already have a valuation after 2 rounds of a few $1 billion, and it's. You could say like it's this AI bubble, but there is substance because the companies make revenues. So they make a lot of revenues because what they are delivering is not bad. It's for us and our team utmost important to build this future tech stack R&D idea and to bring it internally to the company and to update and upskill all the colleagues to say, okay, this is what we see outside. We see that this is happening and we see this is accelerated and it's going, and there's a lot of money in the market. So it's something we need to understand how in this tech stack, what is it what we can do by ourselves? What is it what we need? And one of the things which the bloody truth is for most of the companies in the world AI is also every time something to do with your own data. Is it annotated, labeled, filtered, and so on? But okay, every company will have a different status on this, but it starts usually there. And then you have a big tech stack. And do we have the right partners? Is Microsoft, Google, who do I need to work with? So there's a lot of different things. But I think, and that's the thing, if you really use corporate venture capital in the right way, you bring this kind of what you see outside, inside of the company, but you directly adopt it to the Henkel strategy then and say, this is, what Henkel should do, and these are my recommendations. We should do this by ourselves. This is what we need to protect. This is where we need to invest. This is what we need to partner. This is what we need to build. And then you have if you ask me, at least a strategy which is some kind of evaluated and confirmed from outside, and it cannot be that wrong. And then, it is all about how you transport this information inside your company.
Marc, now I'm going to go to the section that will be the most replayed section of this and most reshared and most screamed at, which is the section where I'll ask you to expand on the point that you made in the beginning, which is that professional CVCs should be able to beat financial VCs over a cycle.
Yeah. So maybe many people will scream or so, but I think I will try to explain why I think so. There are a lot of CVCs out there, some of them have a clear plan, what they do. They are pretty well organized, pretty well structured. They know what they do. They know why they do it, and so on. Having a huge company in your background, having all of these experts, supply chain, production line, marketing, sales, pricing, and so on, having all of this, having 150 years of history, having partners all over the world, having, production lines all over the world, can open every door basically, because I think Henkel is working with most of the companies in the world. We know people everywhere. Having a strong network in the VC and CVC landscape, we know the people of all the other corporates as well. So we can deliver a lot of value to each investor, to each investment, for sure. So what's happening? VCs are reaching out to us since a long time, all to the top 10 VCs from the US, with their portfolio companies and asking me, hey, Marc, we are in due diligence of this company. Can you give me your feedback? I'm the reference call. Can you please test this out? Okay, maybe we can. I asked the guys, the CDIO was sitting on my floor. So I go to the CDIO and ask him, hey, can you give me your expert and let me know about this solution? And we can get a feedback. So if you then have a team understanding your company and being able to act like an investor, having all the skill sets, financial skill sets, making competition benchmark, and you do a due diligence like a professional VC, and you're sticking to the areas you understand, you don't go wrong and right and reft or so on, and you only stick there, that you don't do your own investments with some other CVCs. You are co-investing in a syndicate where you have an investment hypothesis evaluated from outside, and you have this, and you are then co-investing with equity, with, I don't know, Lakestar, you're going with inside partners, whatever, yeah, and you have a joint investment hypothesis, and my role in this company is to do this and this and this, and you can even test it out, yeah, and validate if this is true in proof of concepts, which you can set up yourself. I think, the valid question is, if you are not good in this and you don't return the money, you make something wrong, because it sounds simple, but it is not. But everything you have, you need to utilize it. If you utilize the things you are having, is much more than every VC is having. VCs cannot do this. They need to ask other companies to have reference calls, to evaluate, give me the results of the POC, do this, and this. Also for M&A, if you want to sell your startup, we have an M&A team. It's fantastic at Henkel. So you can even utilize our network to sell it to other companies. So everything what you need would be here. But okay, I understand. Startups don't want to have crappy CVCs on their cap table. Yeah, I agree. So work with the good ones, and there are some of them. Looking into the top 25 quartiles of the financial performance, and if you see this, European, US, by Carter, and so on, the TVPIs, the net TVPIs coming in, I can directly name you 4, 5, 6 CVCs who are much better than most of the VCs, which are making a lot of marketing outside. So the consolidation, what is happening as well at the moment, is showing that, maybe it's too many VCs in the world. It's okay. Maybe we need the right ones, which is also okay. But I would make the bet, if you do your things right, if you have a professional team, you know what you want, you know what you don't want, and you know what you do if you find it, why should you be worse in the performance like a VC? I don't find any excuses. So then maybe yourself are not doing a good job. And then you should ask yourself if you're doing the right job. But I think if you're doing it professionally, you will ever come up with a very nice multiple next to the strategic value you are providing.
And I couldn't agree more. Right? The value creation part of CVC is the holy grail, right? I was brought up in venture capital in 10 years before joining a CVC, right? And after those 5 years with a CVC, I was flipped around, in my opinion, about that. And I think the anecdote here, Andreas, is that if you, for example, look at Eric Schmidt's innovation endeavors in the US, right? He sets up industry for us where he brings in corporates to share their opinion on specific topics, right? They're trying to learn from the corporates about what is important right now, because the VCs do not have access to that normally, right? So they need to find their way in. And I think from everything Marc shared, what we need to be great at being corporate investors is to understand how we harvest and use that value creation for our startups when we engage with them, whether we invest into them, partner with them, or decide to build them ourselves.
Yeah, but this ties perfectly into what I wanted to ask you, Marc, because I agree with you that there's such a strong foundation. It should be possible. Fact of the matter is, though, that oftentimes and too often, the CVC units or the brilliant people that are hired in to run CVC units, where you actually go and pick out really great talent to run it, they're a bit hamstrung by, from the start, because the setup behind them is not correct. Where you've done an incredibly good work with Henkel is making sure that when you came in, you took the time and dealt with the things that needed to be dealt with. And I know we're coming up on the end here, but I'd love to ask you about how did you run that process? What characterizes your partnership with the CEO of Henkel so that you're able to be as productive as you are?
Yeah. So the thing is that as I started, you have also two opportunities. You can make it directly happen by hiring senior guys from the industry, former VC guys, and you can hire them. The budget might explode, but you can hire them, and maybe then you can make a bunch of good a bunch of good investments. So I had a good mix of people from Henkel who are very well connected and can, find out have the relationship, the trust to the different parts, because I didn't know so many people as I started, but you need some of these people. But on the same time, you need to match them with also young professional people, highly talented guys who brings everything they need to be shaped like a diamond over the time, but who have the competence in financial discipline and so understanding, can do everything, due diligence and so on. If you have this, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So it goes in steps. The first step is make the documentation right, get the expectations in the room. The next step is then showcase that you can do it. Go back and understand if you need to change your strategy, if it's the right one. But over the time, the people develop into more senior roles. And then you, of course, need to give them more freedom degrees to grow. And they are sticking to you and don't leave for the next VC because they see they're a part of something which is working pretty well. And they also see they can make the impact. I'm speaking about my boss. He's a great guy because he's, being the CEO of Henkel means that you have a long day. Calendar is full, yeah, but he's a very, very visionary. He's very innovative. So he, of course, is looking not only into the next 2 years, he's also looking into the next 150 years of Henkel and tries to make the right things today. He gives me the freedom degree to operate, and he supports me in setting this up in the right way. So this is also what you need. You have to have a boss who trusts you, that you know what you do. But of course, this is also something, a trust you need to pay back, because at the end, it is a partnership which is driving also the future of this fund. So, and I'm very happy that I found this person in this company who is encouraging me to do so. And then I need to say is, in which company do you find it that people from my team could, go for lunch with him or with our chief HR officer? So our company is special, and that's great. It's a family-driven company, stock noted, but it's still a very special structure with a lot of values, which are helping me to build a trusted environment over all levels. This is true value of this company, and I think so. This makes a big difference to many. I don't know. I've only worked for a few, but maybe to many companies in this world.
But I think here, Marc, this is, this is spot on, one of the differences between Europe and the US, right? When we look at in Europe about the age of the companies in Europe on our different stock exchanges, right? They are so old. The capabilities that we have in Europe in the boardroom about innovation and corporate venturing in general is too limited. We need more people with a venture mindset on the European boards to make sure that it's done the right way, right? It's like, the average lifetime of a CVC is 3.7 years, and it cannot be that way. And this is where, we need to take it to the next step and the next level, right? It is getting the people like your CEO out there talking, what is corporate venturing and how do you use that in your strategic toolbox to develop our European companies, to ensure our everything that we have going on in Europe right now. We need to keep our tech here in this world we are in.
Marc, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. And once again, congratulations with being the inaugural winner of the CVC award at the EUVC Awards.
Thank you very much. It means a lot to me, and it was a fantastic event. I can only encourage all the people who are listening to this to really join the next one. It was fantastic. I learned a lot. I have not really left the room. Even in the pauses, I stayed in and had great discussions. It was great. I learned so much about new areas I have never heard about. It's great. Thank you very much also for this podcast.